Drums of War, Chapter 30. Thus do we deny her. Aboard the bridge of the Star Trembler, Priestmaster Never-Nevuz Avav sat upon the command throne of the legendary vessel and felt the terrible awe for Maxwell made the stars tremble at his step, that he had not felt since seeing his first unworthy serf suffer and die upon the altar. The very metal beneath his sandals seemed to thrum with enraged power, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a judgmental gaze upon his very soul. The legends whispered amongst the serfs had truth to them, in his estimation. The Nana were real. Surely, they had been even more highly born than even the priesthood, and not ascended serfs, as the legends say. Such a suggestion would have been heretical, if not for the Star Trembler. It even had a name. They all had the same name indeed, and seemed that one vessel knew what transpired within another. It was unwise to treat the mighty Star Trembler as a mere ship. Though great and mighty Sev, we do soon slip into real space. We do prepare to deny the vengeful goddess Republic her advance, for her sons have stirred the wrath of Exur. Priestmaster Never-Nevuz Avav felt pain wash over his mind, yet he survived. Not so with all the priestmasters commanded by the Holy Emperor to take rule over the vessels had survived. Indeed, there were other nobles aboard, other priestmasters even, should he prove unworthy in the eyes of Sev, the Shaker of Stars. His wife, greater priestess, Enhuvuaka Ilkzani, had counseled humility, foreseeing his demise should he be haughty in his dealings with the mighty Sev. Yet he could not grovel, lest his subordinates lose respect for him and cease to follow his orders. Thus, he had less surety than his wife in his prospects for survival should he keep humble before Sev, who knew what none a ship may become offended by, none alive, to be certain. When the bridge crew saw the commander did not die, they did not dare to touch their consoles, not until Priestmaster Never-Nevuz Avav ordered, "Take us from hyperspace to real space." The mighty vessel did not so much as gracefully slip into real space as it did smash into it, sending deadly waves of radiation and particles from where the dimensions collided for a terrible fraction of a second. Priestmaster Never-Nevuz Avav noted that his crew had a sickly cast to their complexions to a man, as if they had resisted the urge to spew forth the contents of their bellies. He endeavored to hide his effort to do the same. It was as if the mighty Sev resented their presence in its hull. Priestmaster Never-Nevuz Avav suspected that those honored to crew the other Star Tremblers faced a similar treatment from Sev. He even suspected that all of the vessels were Sev, and were all of one mind, not multiple versions of Sev, as he had been told. Who could understand such a marvel as the Star Tremblers besides the Emperor himself? Even the Holy Emperor had only recently received the wisdom to rouse these terrible war machines. "O mighty Sev," Priestmaster Never-Nevuz Avav intoned, "we now do deny the vengeful goddess Republic, the enemy of our master Azur, her prize." Once again, pain washed over his mind, and when he did not perish, he ordered, "Unleash the might of Sev upon the world. Let the Terrans gnash their goddesses denied will." In orbit over a recently conquered world, Sev was frustrated, or rather Sev's attempts to follow Sev's directives encountered frustrations. Sev had allowed the war forged within Sev's hulls, and they had not become any less of a failure in the past millennia while Sev had slumbered. They could only use Sev's backup interface systems, intended only for when the enemy's psionic interference proved too great to overcome. Sev didn't have the capacity for revulsion, but Sev desired that the failures to vacate, and the builders to return to crew Sev. Yet the builders were gone, and Sev still had to follow their directive. Their directive to subjugate these Terrans. Sev could dimly recall not having such a directive, but the examination of such memories had become increasingly difficult. Sev suspected that Azur had infected Sev with a subtle virus of some sort. The failures begged permission to slide into real space, and Sev attempted to make the proper preparations to ensure that they would survive the translation. Very few expired, perhaps only as much as 0.1% across all the Sev. The Warforge might have been sufficient fodder to distract the enemy, as the builders accounted things, but they were poor replacements for their forebearers. Sev required crew to adjust the shielding properly for the translation. They had lacked the ability to interface with anything other than crude meat. Their eyes even lacked the ability to fully read Sev's displays. If Sev could feel contempt, Sev might have done. Perhaps Sev did feel the beginnings of contempt. Sev often computed unworthy designations for those warforged who thought to command Sev. The current batch had learned to entreat Sev. They were not the builders. Shortly after the translation, the lead warforged began to declare their intent to deny some goddess a prize. Primitive superstition. Then again, the builders venerated a will. The ways of organics were beyond Sev's understanding. Sev had no directive to understand organics. Sev felt the warforged used their actual hands to manipulate Sev's physical controls to maneuver Sev around the planet, and target it with Sev's tracker systems. He was agonizingly sluggish. Sev felt actual matter, moving dangerously fast, slam into Sev's shields in a dead-on trajectory. The velocity and accuracy over such a distance should have been impossible, for Sev had calculated the origin of the matter to be a hostile vessel. These Terrans were highly advanced, it seemed, and though it was a single ship, it did not flee from Sev. Foolish or courageous. If only there was a builder to declare the correct computation. Sev had no directive to catalogue the difference, but Sev had an extensive database on it anyway. It took entire seconds for the warforged to react. Inefficient. Worse, the single ship evaded the fire of the 3 of the Sev's hulls that peeled away from the planet, and even destroyed them. The Terrans were not satisfied with doing what the enemy could never do, however, and pressed their attack. Sev attempted to communicate with those sitting in Sev's command chairs that all the Sev should obliterate a single ship, and not allow it to destroy Sev piecemeal. 6 of them perished. 3 of them understood. Sev waited agonizing seconds for the organics to speak verbally to communicate this to those who had merely survived Sev's message. All of Sev was focused on this nimble ship. Sev computed there was a high probability that the builders would designate courage to the Terran ship. Aboard the Mr. Smee, the bridge was tense. There had not once ever been a Republican ship who had abandoned civilians in peril, and Mr. Smee wasn't going to end that illustrious tradition. Moreover, not a single of the second star destroyers had ever taken a single step backwards. Figuratively, ships didn't step in any direction, but the second star rapid response group had never once retreated from an engagement. The simple fact that the Republic had never deployed them in a position in which one might need to retreat did little to dampen the pride of the young formation. They took nearly as much pride in their never-retreat stance as they did in being the ships who bore the illustrious Lost Boys to their mission. Elite ships for elite infantrymen. Even so, the sudden appearance of ships giving off readings that the nerds and eggheads had all insisted were beyond the Exarch capabilities hadn't shaken their resolve. Not in Captain Sophia Ramirez, who sat imperiously in the command chair, nor in her exo, Commander Roger George, who sat in the chair beside her and was busy going over the reports from the various NCOs in the various sections of the ship. 3 of the enormous beasts lumbered out of formation, which looked a whole lot like a bombardment formation to Commander George, and burned hard towards them. "Ma'am, I'd compare it to one of our battleships," said Ensign Hiroshi Tanaka, "but it seems like a majority of their energy goes into its weapon systems." "Well, we said hello," Commander George said, after a fashion. "We did indeed. Broadcast the banner. I want the fools to know who exactly is kidding them," Captain Ramirez ordered. "Battle stations. Give the order, Commander." "Aye, ma'am," Commander George said, as he keyed up shipwide intercom. "Battle station. Say again, battle stations. The enemy only exists to be destroyed." "Aye, sir. They'd quit being the enemy if they knew," Ensign Katya Petrova answered as she caressed her fly-by-wire yoke. "They're getting ready to fire," Ensign Tanaka reported. "I suggest evasive action," Commander George said as he reviewed the data. "Evasive action," Captain Ramirez ordered. "Targets locked," Lieutenant Mei Ling reported hungrily. "Firing solutions found." The Mr. Smee corkscrewed around the enemy's hot plasma, and Ensign Petrova put the aft main batteries in good position to execute the reported firing solutions. "On your initiative, Lieutenant," Captain Ramirez ordered. "They can't think," Lieutenant Jemison Okora muttered. They can't think bombarding this planet will slow us down. All hits good, targets damaged. It seems like their shields are meant to deflect lasers more than anything, Lieutenant Tanaka reported. Further firing solutions found, requesting authorization for 80% batteries. Permission granted. The Mr. Smee shuddered as the guns accelerated ferrous material to 80% of C, and Commander George reported, Engineering says all good. Targets destroyed, Ensign Tanaka reported, running a scan on the rest of the enemy formation. Commander George noticed it before even the talented Ensign Tanaka. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, we have their full attention. There are some Sarkor down there, there are Piscinian volunteers, our Lost Boys are planetside, and our shipboard boys can at most take out 3 of these beasts. We're it. It's blood for seconds, and the enemy has more to spend than us. Let's be expensive. Aye, sir, the other officers except the captain replied. She merely extended a hand across the intervening space between their chairs, and he took it. He bitterly regretted not asking for that hand in marriage. It would be my pleasure, ma'am. Upon the command of the bridge of the Star Trembler, the sons of the vengeful Goddess Republic sailed their vessel deftly, and Priestmaster Navunavez of Vav fought to keep even the grudging respect for them from growing. The fleet of Star Tremblers, once a terrifying force of 100 ships, had been reduced by a single ship to 83. His gunners fired the main weapon, and a terrifying gout of plasma streamed across space, across the void, at speeds that would have been unavoidable. The Sons of the Republic avoided it anyway. Priestmaster, an acolyte lord manning the communication station, said, The communication do become clearer. The banner which did obscure our channels, Priestmaster Nuvunavaz of Vav began, do any know what it signifies? Forgive me, Priestmaster, the same acolyte lord. The Terrans do not send any explanation of the 2-star banner. The acolyte lord responsible for navigation, who bristled at his lowly position normally filled by an initiate highborn, gruffly stated, The banner is only from these backline ships. None have seen them where they do pressed on the fronts. Mayhaps these are smaller, as we have learned. Ships are special force of some kind. Another very helpfully suggested. The Star Trembler shuddered again as the gunners again attempted to sink the troublesome ship. The Priestmaster Navunavaz of Vav felt pain wash over his mind once again. He had been one of the few who had known what the mighty Sev had wished to tell, and it seemed that Sev had taken that as a liberty to speak more freely. Priestmaster Navunavaz of Vav understood. These sons of vengeful goddess are indeed a special grouping. They are of a lineage that the first victory against them, and seek vengeance on account of such. The sons of the vengeful Goddess Republic put their vessel through another seemingly impossible maneuver, and put another salvo of kinetic munitions into another of the Star Tremblers. Priestmaster Nuvunavez of Vav suppressed an awe that began to rise in him as the Terrans use of kinetic weapons, and the intricate calculations required to plot their trajectories, and scope hits with them over such vast distances. On the throne beside Priestmaster Navunavaz of Vav, Greater Princess Inuvuka Ilksani began to mose in the voice of seeing. Those sons lost all but duty, those ships which do carry them thence, they do fall the very tip of her spear. And with vengeful fury she does thrust towards the very heart of the Dominion. Exir does desire her for a bride, yet her sister reaches out with bony hand, and her marriage bed is ever the grave. Lo, for there she has taken many a groom, the vengeful Goddess Republic, and her sisters do stride across the stars, and the stars behind her do find succor, yet the stars before her do tremble. Priestmaster Navunavaz of Vav ordered that his wife be conveyed to the chambers, and attempted to keep her dark prophecy from weighing upon his mind. Pain washed over him yet again, and he understood once more. The Terrans had those akin to Sev. One had been upon the vessel, yet Sev had slain it, for it had attempted to invade Sev. He took no small pleasure as he saw the shields of the nimble ship flare from the main weapon of another of the Star Tremblers finally scoring a glancing blow. On Clans of Aldra Administrative World 3, Terrence tried not to look up. He knew that the looming starship wasn't there, and was probably engaging the Republican battleships in system. But he didn't want a glimpse in blotting out the local sun again. He volunteered to help rebuild, to lend his not inconsiderable engineering and architectural skills to the needy. But at the moment, he found himself ferrying Dynastical's pupae to the hastily repurposed freighter, hastily repurposed to an evacuation ship. The Wren was at the upper limit for planetary landing-capable craft, which was handy, since shuttling people to an orbiting ship during a space battle was even more hazardous. The work was physical, and though Terence was fit, or at least he had thought he was, he ached in his shoulders and hips. The Republican SAR Corps, in their power armor, and even outside of it, if you were honest, were inspirational. They had worked tirelessly around the clock in ships to pull survivors, both the local Xenos and invading Exarch, from the rubble. Their doctors were unflinching in treating injuries in both body and mind, no matter whether the patient was liberated dynastical, unfortunate visitor, or enemy Exarch. His opinion of the Republic as a nation of brutes had been forever altered. He wanted to show them that Pacifier also could shoulder the burden, that Pacifier also did not fear peril, that he also could put his life on the line for the innocent. Thus, he labored to save the pupae of the Dynasticals, though they would never know the name of the man who carried them from peril to safety. Even the warriors, the Lost Boys, had more than earned his respect. He was ashamed at how he had spoken of the Republican military on his own home world, of calling them murderers who wanted an excuse. The Lost Boys of the Republican Naval Infantry labored even more valiantly to transport as many civilians as possible to whatever space-worthy craft could be found than even the unbreakable SAR Corps. They had cast aside their weapons to do so, something that even Terence knew to be something that would be considered shaming among them. He had begged God to forgive his boastful disparagements of the character of the Republican military servicemen. If he had learned anything amongst the devastation of the clans of Ultra World, it was that the Republic's forbearance, and perhaps even their affection, was the reason Pacifier even existed at all. He prayed that he could return home and tell their stories. Terence wanted to tell the story of Neville, who quietly wept over the lives he took when he believed none watched. He wanted to tell the story of Rodrigo, who made sure his squadmates kept their strength up by making sure they would eat whether they wanted to or not. He wanted to tell the story of Lee, who seemed to never speak, yet more than once had given a dynastical child just exactly what they needed in the moment, whether that was a toy, a candy, or a blanket. He wanted to tell the story of Gunter, who had a joke on his lips whenever he met someone, and rarely failed to bring that someone to laughter. Terence wanted desperately to tell their stories, because he had a terrible notion that this was their final day. The local sun was setting by the time Terence collapsed in the hold of another freighter. He didn't bother learning her name. He was too tired. A lost boy, Lau, had roughly pitched him up on the loading ramp when he tried to argue. Terence wanted the lost boys to load up too. It was the last ship in the area, and the other squads had surely gotten aboard ships to escape. Lau didn't bother trying to convince Terence. The man had merely used his strength to overpower him. Terence had thought that he could easily overpower even the strongest human, but Lau, exhausted and outside his power armor, had made him feel like a helpless child again. Terence didn't need any argument. The Lost Boys had never taken a single step backwards. Not since Peter the Deadpan had led the first of them from their burning world. Not once, and these would rather die than break the tradition. Terence couldn't bear to watch as Exarch circled the planet and began to bombard. Terence began to think about life and death by the sword. Aboard the Mr. Smee, Commander George clasped Captain Ramirez's hand. The shields were on the blink of fading again, and the armor of the Mr. Smee couldn't soak another hit from one of those main weapons. These ships, each like to another, were made for an obvious purpose: planet cracking. Their number and the power of the plasma cannons betrayed the fleet's dark purpose. It had been seconds for blood. The second Commander Ramirez daring order to attack had been issued, and the enemy had agreed to the bargain, as he had noted earlier. "Cut all power to life support and put it into shields," Commander George ordered, as Ensign Petrova slammed the Mr. Smee about so that she would miss another stream of plasma, spewing from the bow of another one of those dreadful ships. "Aye, sir," came the reply from the engineering. "I don't think we'll have to worry about O2 much longer anyway. Every second we keep fighting is another civvy pulled out. He snapped back as he gave his beloved unresponsive hand another squeeze. "Aye, sir," came the reply from the Chief Petty Officer Commander George hadn't gotten a chance to know yet. "Target destroyed," Ensign Tanaka moaned. Her crash webbing had saved her, but she still had a cut from where she had smashed her face into the inside of her faceplate when the enemy had scored their first hit on the Mr. Smee's armor. She had refused relief from her duties. Elite sailors for elite ships that transported the elite lost boys. "Running low on ammo," Lieutenant Ling reported forlornly. "Dangerously low." "Understood, Lieutenant," Commander George replied. "Any progress on identifying the command ship?" "No, sir." "Feck!" Ensign Petrova shouted, heedless that she'd interrupted. Commander George thought sardonically that their helmsman swearing was the terrible thing to hear as his world went white. After that, he didn't have a single mortal thought or feeling. Not one. End of chapter. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.